During the development of Disneyland, the monorail system was planned to be part of the opening of Tomorrowland. So they wanted it in that section of the park.
Which seems fitting.
Totally, because it is very, like you said.
It would be out of place in Adventureland.
I would assume so. Unfortunately, Walt Disney and his team of Imagineers could not find a suitable version to make his dream a reality. Okay, number 2, Walt noticed a monorail train on a trip to Germany and immediately envisioned it as his transportation for the future. He knew he wanted one in his park. With the help of Alweg Company in Germany, this dream came to Disneyland on June 14th, 1959. It opened as part of the Great 1959 expansion, along with the submarine voyage and the Matterhorn bobsleds.
All still pretty fun rides.
All still pretty fun rides and very cutting edge for what the time was. So Bob Gurr was first hired by WED Enterprises, WED being Walt Elias Disney Enterprises, now known as Walt Disney Imagineering.
Right. He worked on the monorail. He worked on Autopia. And let's listen to him kind of describe how Walt came up with the idea for the monorail.
Walt always had the idea that he wanted a monorail in Disneyland, right from the original sketches, Disneyland, that Herb Ryman did. One day he was in Germany and he saw a monorail train that he'd never seen before. Walt gave a task to everybody at Disneyland. In the case of the monorail, he figured that since I designed the Viewliner train 2 years before, it was logical that I would design the monorail for 1959. And we simply started drawing that monorail in October of 1958, and by June 14th of 1959, we were giving the Vice President of the United States a ride on it. Well, we rehearsed the ribbon cutting.
So the project began in 1958, and the building process originally started in Los Angeles, but later moved to Disney's Burbank Studios to speed up the process. It was still not quite fast enough for Walt Disney. All right, number 3, the attraction's original title was the Disneyland Alweg Monorail System.
Wow, that's not a catchy name at all.
Alweg being an abbreviation for Axel Wenner-Gren, the founder of Alweg. Imagineer and Disney legend Bob Gurr, best known again for designing those vehicles, many vehicles. And he had just worked together to design these trains. Then it was also given a nickname, which many of you know now as the Highway in the Sky, which is super appropriate.
It's every time I see the monorail go by, I stop and look at the monorail like I've never seen it go by before.
Yes, what is that?
I don't know, but it's like, there goes the monorail. And I think to myself, I've seen the monorail go by 4 million times. Why do I stop and look at it like I've never seen it before?
Every time, no matter where we are, no matter which park. Here's another clip of Bob Gurr discussing the monorail.
When I was asked to design the first monorail in America, I was tickled pink to design something that was going to look really, really super cool, not knowing that this would become an American Disneyland classic train design.
It's true. It is such a classic design.
Okay, number 4, December of 1986, the monorail was honored as a historical mechanical engineering landmark by the American Society of Mechanical Engineers.
Well, that's pretty epic.
An official plaque was erected at the Tomorrowland station and states, quote, "The cars are equipped with 600-volt DC, 100 HP electric motor driving rubber-tired wheels on a single beam trackway," end quote. That's a lot.
That is a lot to say. You say that 5 times fast.
You can see the plaque when you're in Disneyland today. That's pretty cool.
So these are all electric too. That's another thing that was way ahead of their time, is making these an all-electric vehicle.
Number 5, when the monorail first opened, Tomorrowland Station was the only open arrival and departure point. Did you know that?
I did not, but I do now, and that would be such a bottleneck.
Yes. Well, guests would travel in Disneyland round trip around Tomorrowland, soaring by Autopia tracks and the submarine lagoon in just under a mile's distance loop. These electronically propelled trains were almost silent as they passed by, so they would not distract guests as they wandered through Tomorrowland. All right, number 6, back to Bob Gurr one last time. He accidentally kidnapped the President of the United States on the monorail.
Well, we rehearsed the ribbon-cutting ceremony dedicating the new monorail And in doing so, that Richard Nixon, his wife, the children, Walt, and some Secret Service people came up to the platform. Walt introduced everybody all the way around and said, let's give Nixon a ride. So I drove off without saying anything to anybody. When we came back over the sub-platform, Nixon could see that all the Secret Service guys were still on the platform, which meant none of them were on the train, which meant I had just kidnapped the Vice President of the United States.
Well, he wasn't the president, so he's fine. I wonder if he got in trouble for that, though.
I would imagine the Secret Service was probably not too happy. I wonder if some of the Secret Service team actually lost their job that day.
Yeah, that's a big no-no.
Number 7, Walt Disney owned the Disneyland monorail personally.
This is interesting to me. I found this fact. This is the one fact that I found.
I thought you found 2 facts.
Well, this is one of them.
Okay.
But this was interesting to me. Walter backwards. It was called Retlaw Enterprises.
Okay.
Which is... Walt loved his name, didn't he?
Oh my gosh, it's Walter backwards.
Everything that he did was his name backwards or like initials or something like that. The Disney Monorail Retlaw paid fees to Disneyland for the attraction rights right away and employed those that worked at the attraction. That's great. So if you worked on the monorail, you didn't work for Disneyland, you worked for Retlaw.
Retlaw.
You're like, hey, where do you work? I work for Retlaw Enterprises. And they're like, what's that? It's Disneyland.
That's
hilarious.
I
know what Disneyland is.
Yeah. Wow. Fun times.
Walt had also owned the Viewliner and the horse-drawn streetcars on Main Street, USA. All of these assets were sold to the Walt Disney Productions in 1982. This is another interesting fact. It only goes, and this kind of reminds me of Space Mountain, it only goes 40 miles an hour, top speed.
Supposed to introduce it as number 8.
Number 8.
Okay.
Rewind.
It
only goes 40 miles per hour.
That's it. That's
Although
the
when
maximum.
When you're dangling above the swamps in Disneyland, heading between Magic Kingdom and Epcot, it feels like it goes a little faster than that.
That one for sure. When I'm standing and I'm looking down, it's pretty high off the ground, and I do get a little weak in the knees.
That's probably the only one that gets to top speed. I don't think we've ever gone top speed around the loop.
Maybe not. I don't think so.
You know, I feel like 40 miles an hour around the loop would feel like 80 because it's a constant turn.
Yeah, it's a constant turn.
Imagine heading into the Contemporary Resort at 40 miles an hour.
Zooming on in, right?
Zooming on in at a whopping 40 miles per hour.
Yeah, that's pretty fast, I got to tell you.
Number 9. Did you know this? There are actually 3 backup diesel-powered trains on property reserved for if there is a power outage, because these are electric vehicles.
So this is at Walt Disney World.
Correct.
Okay.
In Walt Disneyland, you just left to walk back.
You're just like, see ya.
Yeah, there's no power. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Go ahead.
But in Walt Disney World, there's 3 backups, and they're diesel powered, just in case the power goes out or there's an emergency. Because, you know, there was a lot of tropical happenings in Walt Disney World sometimes, and they need to be able to be prepared to get people back out of the resort. Because it's not, until recently, you couldn't walk back to the Floridian or the Polynesian. You can only walk to the Contemporary.
Oh, that's true.
So how are you going to get back to your resort if there's no power? Going across that lake in the dark would be scary.
Yeah, I wouldn't love it.
I wouldn't love that either.
Number 10, and so we've talked a lot about Walt Disney World monorails, but those trains were also installed thanks to Walt's vision of a monorail system in Epcot, his experimental prototype community of tomorrow. At Walt Disney World, it's more than just an attraction. It's, like we said earlier, it's a transportation mode to transport guests between resorts and parks. And the monorail trains carry an average, are you ready, Bruce, of how many people are on these trains sometimes?
Oh, I know how many. There's a lot, because when I go on them, there's quite a bit of people.
Monorail trains carry an average of 16 million passengers annually at the Walt Disney World Resort.
And 14 million of them are between the hours of 8 and 10 a.m. and 9 and 11 p.m.
Ride high in the sky.
Highway in the sky, baby.
This Walt Disney World, like I said, it's more of a transportation, but one of my favorites is the fact that it stops at the Contemporary, Grand Floridian, Polynesian. Even if you're not going to the park, if you somehow can park for the day at one of those resorts, you can go and you can see some of the Magic Kingdom Park. Although I like Bruce's idea. I wish you got to see some of Tomorrowland a little bit more, but maybe someday, who knows?
Do you prefer...
Yes.
We're going to Disney World, right? Mm-hmm. Is the monorail your form of transportation that you would enjoy the most taking to the Magic Kingdom?
Actually, no. I actually use the monorail for Walt Disney World as a leisurely ride. I prefer, believe it or not, saving that experience for like something to do that's not like a free.
So, because you want to enjoy the monorail and not look at it as a way like if you take it to the Magic Kingdom, you're looking forward to getting to the Magic Kingdom, and you're not really enjoying the moment on the monorail.
Correct. I think that that's the one thing that Disneyland does. Although you can travel in Disneyland now, you can still just use it as, and it's acceptable to just use it as your ride of an attraction to ride while you're in the park. But for Walt Disney World, I sort of use the same philosophy I've always had, and I just prefer to use it that way. In fact, I'm hoping that they were doing this dining event thing that you could do where you could dine around the sky and visit all the resorts and eat. But I think you could do that on your own. You don't necessarily need
I bring snacks on the monorail all the time. I do that every time I ride the monorail. I have a drink and a snack.
You can hopefully valet.
Is that what you're talking about?
No, maybe not so much. But I guess now it's a little harder to go to the resorts, especially the ones close to the Magic Kingdom, to park. Usually now either have to really have it has to be a day where it's not crowded, because obviously they have to cater to guests, or valet parking, which is the next thing, which doesn't necessarily make the monorail free if you do that.
No, it doesn't. And I would much rather get a reservation somewhere and eat and then use that as a way to hop on the monorail versus just paying to valet my car and then going on the monorail.
Yeah, I don't think you're right.
I'd much rather eat. Eating's much better.
Just justify it by spending more money and eating.
That's true.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. Please share your comments, like and share all of our shows if you can with friends, and we hope you like it.
Yeah, we also don't forget to subscribe to our other podcast, UTM TV, where we talk about a little bit more outside the genre of Disney, a little bit of Universal, a little bit of TV and film, some pop culture, whatever else that we find interesting.